Hi, good morning, everyone. Mark Quickle here from Planet Technologies. I am the technical practice manager for both our collaboration business as well as our Azure application platform team. And for those of you that have watched some of my other videos, you know I try to do a technical update once a month. And unfortunately, had to take a little bit of time off this summer. We had a fantastic summer at Planet. Fantastic in a lot of ways. We saw amazing amount of growth this year. Our team did a lot of really cool projects, and I got to be hands-on involved in a number of them, which was great in one way, but unfortunately prevented me from getting to do these videos as much as I'd like. Uh, I also am happy to report that we went through some certifications over the over the summer, and I was able to be one of a few on the team to get the Azure DevOps Engineer Expert certification through Microsoft. So, if nothing else, hopefully it helps to qualify a little bit of what I'm talking about here. And you know, we had not only a lot of fun and did a lot of great things at Planet, but time didn't stand still outside of Planet Technologies either. And Microsoft did a lot of really cool things this summer. You know, .NET Core 3 going into general availability is absolutely fantastic. Numbers of updates for Visual Studio and Azure DevOps, Azure Data Platform updates, things like Data Share. And I am stoked for what may come at Ignite this year as well. So what I'd like to do is kind of reset here. We hit the end of our fiscal year and we're getting ready to start again. I have a few individuals I want to try to bring into some videos here, potentially starting as early as next month. But this month, I really want to take a look at kind of the year ahead for us and look at the Azure Development Operations team and how we look at the capability maturity model. Now, for those of you that have heard of the capability maturity model, it's not really a planet-specific term. It's all about identifying different capabilities within an organization and identifying the gaps in the organization by looking at where they are in their maturity process. And at Planet Technologies, we've developed our own Azure Platform as a Service application that connects with Dynamics and 365 and really allows us to do cloud strategy sessions and talk with customers about where they are in their cloud journey. And we've been kind of thinking through where Microsoft currently is and how we want to be telling our Azure DevOps story. And so, be that as it may, I am the sort of spokesman on behalf of our team here, at least for now, and I'm talking about how we envision uh, our engagements working with you as we think through DevOps with you in the upcoming year. So as you can see, the tool here has a number of different capabilities that are part of it, everything from Azure development operations, infrastructure, collaboration. And I really just want to focus on the Azure application development operations, the pink section in this particular video, and walk from left to right. Now, I'm going to say right up front a couple of things. Number one, when we talk about maturity at a given level, let's say 100 or 200, we're talking about the the full maturity of that particular level, right? So there's not to say you may be doing some level of secure DevOps, which is level 300, at lower levels. That's absolutely going to happen. But what we're talking about here is you have achieved full maturity of that particular capability. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to talk about is that DevOps is really fascinating because we are representing everything in this tool as kind of a linear way, which I think is somewhat accurate. But in some cases, these things can also be circular. You may go back and reevaluate certain processes as we go along. And it's not necessarily a one size fits all. Although I do believe that, from a broad brush perspective, again, as we're looking at how we work with customers and what's been successful for us, following the model from left to right here probably works acceptably. Um, in Azure application development operations, the audience does shift. At level 100, a lot of times we're talking with somewhat less technical people. We're talking with development managers. We may be talking about stakeholders that may be paying the bill for implementation. We may be talking to project managers. Of course, developers probably participate in the process as well. But as we move along, the process gets a little bit more technical. So, and all the way up to bringing infrastructure people and security people in at the upper end. Okay, so it does kind of follow that progression. A little later after this video, I'm going to do one on our our data platform, and that's kind of the opposite. It starts with typically a lot more technical IT people and goes more out to information workers at the end. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. And on that note, if you want to see that video, it will also be on my channel. So take a look for that shortly here after. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in here and start at level 0. At level 0, we're assuming for our customers that they're starting with unstructured code, loosely defined policies and procedures, and often manual controls and processes. And there could be some, you know, different varying degrees of those levels. We work with a lot of customers. We work with some that are, a handful of developers that might work for the Department of Transportation for a state. We may work with, we're working with a group right now that has thousands of developers worldwide. So we're working with a lot of different size groups, and there are a number that have fairly mature on-prem DevOps capabilities today. But remember, this is for Planet, this is the cloud maturity model. So if you're doing everything on-prem and nothing in the cloud, then we're going to put you at level 0, and I'm sorry for that. That's not to say we wouldn't love to help you with implementing any of the stuff that we can at with on-prem systems. And in fact, with DevOps, it kind of affords us the capability a lot of times to do some hybrid work. But if you're doing all your DevOps on-prem, we're still putting it at level 0. At level 0, there's often little document and process. Some folks kind of refer to it as the Wild Wild West or cowboy coding for on the development side. Um, and there's not a lot of information around like the app itself and the app process. Like, how long are lead times to develop new features? What utilization is in place? What's working? What's not working? Different things like that. Deployments are manual. Builds are manual. Um, there may be some level of source code version control. That could be file shares. We work with some people that do just store their stuff in file shares, and others that are using, say, TFS or Subversion on-prem. At level 100, we're really kind of starting with that firm foundation, that setting up of policies and procedures, good code commit habits, branching merging strategies are very, very important for us at this point. Identifying what types of source control you want to use. Do you use if you're using Azure DevOps, which is our platform of choice? We are a Microsoft partner, so we're mostly focused on that. But we'll push TFVC or Git. We have our own thoughts on that depending on what you want to achieve. And in some cases, we may introduce some other systems like GitHub as well, or GitLab for certain types of workloads. So, again, we have our predispositions, but that's not to say that we wouldn't look at the process a little bit holistically. We do a lot of work around your actual teams and processes at this point. Now, we're not necessarily implementing everything at this point. We're going to implement some of it, but it's a matter of defining who's doing the work, what kind of work are they doing, and helping you to establish a plan to get executive buy-in. Because as anybody will tell you that's tried to implement, say, Agile Scrum at a organization that doesn't have executive buy-in, doesn't work. just fails. So, it's very, very important at this point to establish the playing field that everybody will be playing on, and get that sort of signed off the whole way up the chain. So we're very, very involved and super concerned that this part of the process goes well. Um, we're looking at governance controls at this point for Azure DevOps itself, as well as deployment targets, specifically Azure. Customers control their own on-prem environments, so we may provide some insights here, but a lot of times we're working with new Azure customers, and so we're looking at that somewhat holistically. At this level, we also assume that you are at a minimum doing continuous builds. So your code's getting checked into the source control repository, and a build's happening. And it may be contributing to an artifact. You may be pulling in external artifacts into your build process as well. And that can be done using native tools or third-party tools. But at the end of level 100, at a minimum, we want to assume that you are doing automated builds. At level 200, we are looking strongly at value add. So you're doing, you're already working with code at this point. You're already doing your code commits and you're already doing your builds. But let's look at your development processes at this point. How can we make your code quality better? How can we help you deliver your product faster? Some of that may be going back and making tweaks to your utilization in DevOps. Hopefully, we've established almost all of that at level 100, but there could be some residual process there that we go back and take a look at. We, of course, are going to look at your tooling. So, static code analysis is typically being done at this level. We're looking at your testing approach. Are you doing test-driven development, or are you doing, cloud-based load testing? Are you doing, other types of tests? And what does that look like? How can that be automated? How can that be brought into your build process? And then implementing telemetry on your application. So we're big App Insights fans around here. We do a lot of work with it, and we appreciate the value that it brings. We're not saying it's the only tool that you can use, but we definitely will try to start there with you and use it to help understand what's being done in your application, what patterns are coming up frequently, where are patterns that are abnormal coming up, and then tying that into, say, log analytics and Azure Monitor to get an end-to-end sort of read on your application stack. And so that's very, very important at this level. At level 200, we're also assuming that you have a repeatable software deployment process known as continuous deployment, and that could be done in Azure, that could be done um, to another cloud in a multi-cloud scenario, or it could be done on-prem. At this point, we're not really focused on automating the entire deployment process. That would come later, say with infrastructure as code. Um, we are simply trying to make sure you have a basic foundation in place where you have code being um, committed, built, tested, um, and any other analysis that's run against it, and deployed, say, to an Azure App Service. And if you get to that point, we would say, okay, we're going to put a checkbox and say you're done level 200. Um, Also, Key Vault, I almost forgot, Key Vault driven configuration, automated certificate management is done at this point as well. So, this is all about getting, keys and secrets out of your code, making it part of your automated build process where appropriate, and then, doing automated certificate renewals and that type of thing where we can. So at level 200, most of our customers are running a fairly fluid DevOps uh, shop at that point. And so level 300 is just our opportunity to kind of come back and sort of layer even more value on top of where you currently are. Now, I sort of touched on this earlier, and I want to come back to it. Level 300, we're implementing secure DevOps. And so secure DevOps is one of those things that's kind of has its own maturity, and so there's some elements that of this that would be done at level 100. It's very important, for example, for us to identify teams and roles early on, because we want to make sure only the people that are supposed to be doing builds are doing builds, and that's a paradigm of secure development operations is making sure that at least privileged as far as what you have access to, right? So we of course can't roll out um, Azure DevOps without without having basic security set up on the different project collections and the teams structures that are inside of um, uh, those sites as well. So um, all of that is done at the lower levels. But what we're kind of doing here is we're coming back and we're reassessing where you currently are, and then making further adjustments and tweaks to your group to help make your development environment even more secure. And that's done through the process of like security validation tests, where we may check your environment on a regular basis to ensure that the configuration of the services that we're deploying to aren't drifting. There's all kinds of tests that are part of the Azure Secure DevOps Toolkit, which we use a lot for this, that will check for just simple things like did SSL get accidentally disabled on a site, or do you have too many people in an administrators group? Those types of things are all done as part of those verification tests, and we can automate that. We can put that in the log analytics and pull reporting information out for you, and sort of automate the entire security side of this too. So that is a very, very powerful feature for those of you that are using Azure and Azure DevOps, to give you that sort of end-to-end security feeling for level 300. We're also focused on making sure that good Azure policies are set up and configured at this point as well, which kind of sets the stage for level 400, because now we've moved into the more advanced topics here, but we're really looking at infrastructure and configuration as code at this point, right? So after you get through this, you're kind of at the end of our vision for this. All along, right? You've been designing these systems to do deployments and builds and tests and so on. At this point, what we want to do is just streamline that process and make sure it's completely automated end to end. What does it look like to onboard brand new services? Remember, in 200, we were focused on just getting a deployment done. So to get that deployment done at 200, you may have to have an infrastructure person go out to Azure, configure a new app service for you, and then provide you with that information so you as a developer can set that up in your pipeline. Or if you're at 100, you may be doing the deployment through Visual Studio, uh, manually, or even at level 0, you might be doing that manually, but you might have to have someone set that stuff up for you, and essentially your deployments would be done reliant upon I don't want to say bottleneck, but essentially a bottleneck that's being created, waiting for an IT infrastructure person to do that work. When we get up here to infrastructure as code, how those services get provisioned and deprovisioned are actually done as configuration. That configuration is brought in. We may look at using a third-party product like Terraform. We could use Azure ARM templates. There's a lot of different ways sort of to skin that cat, so to speak. And that's what we really focus on, is understanding that vision for what your deployments look like and automating that process here. And then your entire configuration itself is also versioned and put into source control. Well, that's the end of the capability maturity model for Azure DevOps. I really want to thank you so much for your time on it. We are super excited about DevOps this year. I believe that for us, this is this is just going to be an area that's becoming a lot more of interest. We're moving a lot of customers to GCC High, and in that we're having conversations around what it means to work with very, very secure development operations. And we're working with a lot of larger customers that are doing interesting things. Microsoft's making a lot of investments in this space. For those of you that are in the DevOps and have watched some of the videos, I mean, they're doing regular builds of this stuff every couple of weeks and deploying new features. So I am super excited about what we can all accomplish this year. But just remember, if it seems kind of intimidating, that our philosophy on this is to adopt early and often, meaning pick somewhere to start, right? Azure DevOps, you can start with 5 free developers. You can get stakeholders for free. MSDNs are for free, right? So there's certain ways you can kind of get in there and get started, and work with us if you like, and we can kind of help you think through just basic source code management, backlog management, organization, that type of thing at the level 100 level, and then from there kind of grow it on out. So thank you again and have a great day.